My name is Silas Knowles, the ZB Pirate. This is Pushing Boundaries, the Pushing Boundaries podcast, where we talk about everything education. When we bring in educators that are pushing the boundaries of classrooms, pushing the boundaries of their classrooms or school buildings and beyond. So today, got a great host for you today, or excuse me, great guest for you today, not host. I hope to be the host. So I'll show a little graphic. We're going to talk about this awesome new publication coming out from Ready Learner One company, published by Dave Burgess Consulting, who's been on the podcast as well. So definitely, this is something I'm very excited about. I'm actually pretty passionate about this myself. To introduce our guest, let me give you a little video about our guest today, and we'll go into it.
Hi. My name is Jesse Lubinsky. I'm the Chief Learning Officer for Ready Learner One and also the co-author of the Esports Education Playbook, Empowering Every Learner Through Inclusive Gaming. Look, no matter how you cut it, esports is changing the game in terms of the types of opportunities we provide to our students both in and out of the classroom. Join two of my co-authors, Steve Isaacs and Chris Aviles, as well as Lila Bowman, who is the Chief Strategist for the North American Scholastic Esports Federation, as we explore all the different types of benefits that an esports program can provide. Now, whether you're new to esports, looking to just find out a little bit more, or even trying to improve a program that you already have, this session is going to have something for you. In the meantime, enjoy this student-created video that Chris and Steve's students created when they were competing against each other to give you a little taste of what we'll be talking about in our session. Enjoy.
So as much as I would love to have that keep going, I mean, Jesse, how you doing today, brother?
I have to tell you, man, I know why they call you the pirate now. That video is not even public yet.
Hey.
that actually is our for the panel picker for South by Southwest. So that's the video we threw together quickly on the last day of applications where we're like, oh man, we need a video to go with that. So wow, I saw that pop up. Like, how do you get that?
I come up with some. Hey man, I come up with some stuff. Let me tell you. It's just I can find it.
No, cool. It's great. So anyway, if you enjoyed that video, please vote for our session as soon as voting is open. I think in a couple weeks for our South by Southwest session. Mentioned in that video is Christine Lyon Bailey, who's a co-founder of Ready Learner One, and also she co-wrote the esports book as well. She just wasn't going to be with us at South by Southwest.
Excellent. Very, very good. So I got to say Rocket League is close to my heart. I'm a gamer at heart. My former life before education, I used to do something called, I was a metro trainer for GameStop. So for the northern suburbs of Illinois, and we were training new managers and new business leaders to go in to run these $1 million, $2 million, $3 million GameStop locations. So what you're doing is right here, brother. I'm right there with you.
You know what's so funny? Earlier today, I actually hooked up one of those, the NES classics that have all the preloaded games. Wow, what a memory rush, man! You play those games, but the cool part is now playing them and even looking at them and knowing about what we know now about esports. There's so much alignment. It's just we weren't thinking that way back then, right? And also the technology wasn't where it is now,
right?
But when you think about competitive gaming, I mean, it's really been around forever.
So let's talk about that, because I mean, just being the devil's advocate, and let's say, I mean, I'm going to go to my administrator and I'm going to say, look, administrator, esports, I think this is a go. I think this is something that we can do, and it does this, it does that. There's so many positives. And I call you and I go, Jesse, how can I defend this to my admin? What are the benefits then to esports, to a high school or any school for that matter?
So we'll talk about that, but really quickly, it's so funny because when we first formed Ready Learner One as a company, we always knew there were two books we wanted to write. Like right off the bat, we were like, these two we know we want to write, and we're already working on several others. But the two books were AR VR, which we wrote Reality Bytes, which actually you can see the cover on a poster right above me or over my shoulder, and then also Esports, where now we're coming out with that book next month. And what's funny is when we talked about the problems with, not the problems, but the problems around perceptions around esports, it's exactly what you're talking about, right? It's historically video games in school have always been dismissed as this, like this cute thing you're trying to do to make connections with students. But in reality, there's no value from an educational standpoint. And with that in mind, we wrote this book to not only address the users or the educators who know nothing about esports or are just looking for a way to connect with their students, but really for those people who are looking to start programs and don't really know where to begin. And so we have an entire chapter dedicated to what I would call the counterpoints, where we're like, hey, just so you know, if you're interested in starting an esports program, here are the things that people are going to say. And here's the research to support those counterpoint views. So you talk about too much screen time, or you talk about violence in video games, or some of those other major concerns that have always been there with video games. You talked about Rocket League and you showed the video. Notice there were no guns, there was no fighting. It doesn't have to be that way. So when you talk about the benefits, the first section of the book, before we even talk about those counterpoints, we really go into what those benefits are. And really they're SEL benefits, like social emotional learning benefits to having an esports program in your school. But to me, it's really a diversity and equity thing, right? We have struggled to find ways to connect with certain student groups, and esports is really an entry point to that. So really, from a traditional athletic standpoint, when we think about, who's always been a traditional athlete or participated in sports, there's a large percentage of our student population that just cannot find that entryway into that world of our schools. And when you think about the benefits of just being part of an athletics program, it's being part of a team. It's staying in shape. It's having those pathways to scholarships at the collegiate level. Well, esports provides all those things. Mm-hmm. And now you're talking about meeting students where they are in terms of something they're super passionate about, where the ecosystem is already there, because as you probably know, esports is one of the fastest growing, forget about just sport, I would say industries in the world. And right now is only rivaled by American football in terms of viewership.
Especially now, I mean, given the state of everything, I mean, definitely.
So as we wrote, it's funny, we were already deep into writing when the pandemic hit. And we actually had to go back and write a chapter around how esports became the athletics of remote learning. And we shared stories of how schools were still connecting with their students during the COVID lockdowns through esports. And, it's so funny because when we had all these lockdowns, and obviously even now we're still struggling with certain sports coming back at the high school level. I know at least where I am in New York, football was put off till the spring.
Same.
Because so they didn't want the contact. And guess what? Esports still going strong. So there has still been that ability to connect and provide those benefits within the athletic spectrum through esports.
Definitely. I mean, now when you did Reality Bytes is more augmented reality, VR, things like that, applications in the classroom. How do you transition from that to esports? Like, how do you go from VR, like things like the Merge Cube and Oculus and things like that? How do you go from that to the esports realm?
It's so funny because to me, it wasn't really a big jump at all. To me, they're very much in the family of what I would call emergent technologies. So I don't know how familiar you are with the that report that used to be around the COSIN and New Horizons report, which would talk about, the 5 to 10 year, what technologies are kind of on that 5 to 10 year pipeline of being able to really help us in schools. And when we formed Ready Learner One as a company, we were really focused on the acceleration of the adoption of these emergent technologies in schools. Like, how do we remove barriers to improve the adoption rates and timelines for these emergent technologies? AR, VR, and esports all kind of fit in that timeline where you have educators now who are doing it, but it hasn't reached that critical mass yet where most educators either know about it or are adopting it. So AR, VR, we felt very comfortable tackling first. And it's kind of funny too, because when we were emailing before the show, I was talking about Reality Bytes. You're like, oh yeah, I read it. And I was like, really? Like I'm always so surprised when I don't know if it feels like this way for every author after the first book, but like I'm always shocked when someone's actually read something we wrote. So it's just weird. And one time we actually went to a business meeting, and this was with a corporate company. We were sitting in this conference room, and the execs and the VPs walked in. And they were holding Reality Bytes, and I kind of looked at one of my business partners, and I was like, "Did you give them copies of the book before we walked in?" And they were like, "Oh no, we ordered it. We knew we were meeting with you. We ordered it. We read it. We wanted to know what you guys were all about." I was like, "That's so weird." But anyway.
Well, I was talking with Dave. I didn't know if you caught it, but we had Dave Burgess on a couple of weeks ago, and I told him, I'm just like, you gotta stop producing these awesome books. I'm running out of bookshelf room. Like I'm literally, I have to go to the Kindle on the iPad to store some of these books because I'm just like, God damn it! I'm just like, you got another one. There's another one.
Well, do you have ours as a Kindle version or a regular
Reality Bytes? I have the Kindle version.
Okay, so if you had the paperback version, and this is the one thing we were super proud about, Reality Bytes, it's one of the first web AR enabled books. So if you scan the QR code on the back cover, and then hold it over the front cover, Christine, Micah, and I pop out of the cover and start talking to you about the book. And actually, as you go through the chapters, there's interactive AR components on those chapter pages that let you interact with actual assets that we talk about those experiences in the chapters themselves. So it's really an interactive book.
Now I have to go get the books to be able to do that, to add to the damn bookshelf that's overflowing now with everything. But God bless Dave, man. I mean, he was able to round up a great team of people who were writing around him, and I know he's doing more and more and more every day.
He's the pirate king, man. He's got all the booty. The booty is books in his case.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, sometimes you see him on social media. He'll be in Hawaii, and I think that's where the actual pirate ship is located, somewhere in Hawaii.
So I want to tell you, wait a second. So I've actually been to their house.
Oh,
I have to tell you. So
insider information.
Wait, this side story that has like nothing to do with anything. This is while we were still in the editing process of Reality Bytes. I was speaking on the Big Island. I had a speaking gig in Hilo. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, my wife and I were driving over to Kona for a few days. And while we were there, Shelly, Dave's wife, who also is one of the publishers for DBC Consulting, she was she's like, oh, we'd love to meet in person, and she was there. And it turned out our hotel was only like 3 minutes away from their house, so we were going to go over just a little meet and greet thing. Wound up staying 5 hours. It's the most beautiful house I've ever seen in my life. The view, I can't even I know they post pictures of the view, but it does nothing. It doesn't do it justice. I think if we were all going to redo it again, we'd come back as education book publishers, because wow, man, it's just it is amazing. Props to them and props to their house. I love it. They're great.
Probably amassing the kingdom while we speak, and then getting more and more and more. It's just ridiculous. When it comes to esports, I got a question. Is you or any of the your co-authors, are you guys were you involved in creating esports yourself?
So Steve Isaacs and Chris Aviles, they are actually two really well-known experts in the scholastic esports space. So they've been advocates of esports for a long time. We actually talk in the book how we all got connected on this project. But Christine and I, Christine had actually run a program in her school district, and I'm kind of into everything ed tech. So I was on board to begin with. My role on the book really was I interviewed. I did about 36 interviews with people in all over the esports space, from players to coaches to sponsors. You name it. I interviewed someone who's in that role, and really put their stories into the book, and kind of pulled those best stories and pieces of advice into the book. But Steve and Chris were really the practitioners who are on the ground, who are living this every day. And the video you actually showed in the beginning was their students playing each other in Rocket League. And then they went and made the video. And that's the coolest part about this, and I'm sure we would have gotten to this at some point later in the conversation, but the coolest part about esports to me is that it is very, very little of it is about the game itself. It is about all those different opportunities that are there for students to learn how to broadcast, to manage, to stream, all those different roles that are there, which lead to career pathways and opportunities for them, even scholarship opportunities at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
So it is not about being the best. It's like if you're going to be on the baseball team and you want to find that path to success, it's going to be as a player. Same in football, same in basketball. In esports, there's dozens of different entry points to actually carving out skills and career opportunities based on what you do starting in a K-12 program.
Definitely. Now, when it comes to esports and everything else, do you know, like currently, is it, God, what is it? I keep hearing the names like Torchlight and all like Rocket League and stuff. Do you know what's the number one thing going on esports right now?
So like the big games right now, I mean, Rocket League is incredibly popular because it is, again, that non-violent,
and that game's like 4 years old, isn't it? Or 3 years old, still going?
Yeah, and it's still going strong. I mean, it's crazy. So Rocket League, League of Legends, Overwatch. I mean, there's a bunch that are popular. Even Super Smash, believe it or not, people, a lot of schools that start clubs, and this goes back to the point about equity, is this doesn't have to be something like, in other words, even if you're a school that does not have a lot of funding available to you, you could still bootstrap a program together just using systems that kids have. And a lot of schools do that. I know Jim O'Hagan, who also he wrote the foreword for our book, and he actually has an amazing Academy of Esports podcast. He talks about how they did that in his district, I believe, where they started out with kids bringing their own devices before actually kind of building it out. I mean, we've talked to districts where they've opened centers, like these, custom developed stadium seating type deals, whereas other ones, kids are bringing in their own systems to start with. So the starting something isn't difficult. And again, it doesn't even have to be a team. It could be a club. And we talk about that. So I talked about the first couple portions of the book, the counterpoints and the benefits, but we actually go through the step-by-step of, if you're looking to start a club or a program, how you do that. But more importantly, and there's a chapter that Christine and I contributed a lot to, since we've both been in school administration roles. How do you connect? Who are the stakeholders you need to connect with? And what are the conversations you need to have? So before you're worried about practices and things like that, you need to make sure you're talking to all the right people in your school building, because I'm sure, as you know, when you leave the wrong person out, it leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And there are definitely pockets of people in schools who sometimes get overlooked in these type of conversations. So you talk about your facilities people, you talk about your classified clerical staff. So, your parent engagement. Yeah, I mean, we tend to want to just get permission from our higher ups and then kind of run with it. But you need to have dialogue with your students. You need to have dialogue with your teachers, your administration, your parents, your facilities. So we run through all of that and talk about the different considerations and conversations you need to have.
So yes, that's why definitely I'm going to be emailing you later, calling you later for my early reader.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, we talk.
Because I'm going to be needing that chapter specifically because we got the go ahead. We have to go remote learning for the entire second quarter, which means the first semester is pretty much all at home. So this is something I've been interested in of wanting to talk about. So if you got a step by step, I definitely want that in my hands. And
actually this is kind of, the link that's over here on the screen, bit.ly/esports playbook info. If you sign up for that for information as we're getting closer to the release, and this is really for your listeners, we're going to be doing some giveaways with people who purchase early, meaning we're going to be giving we're going to be giving a whole bunch of stuff to really help with those day-to-day the day-to-day running and management of your club or team. Excellent. So we want to make sure we're providing as many resources as possible to help push Scholastic Esports forward. And I will say, I don't know, you're really excited about it now, but since you're in Chicago, I'm not sure you're a Bears fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how this part's going to sit with you. So the book is sponsored by Green Bay Packers running back great Ahman Green, 4-time Pro Bowler, and now esports coach at Lakeland University in Wisconsin. So he went from professional football to playing and coaching esports. So that's what he does now. Is he's a collegiate head coach for.
And Ahman Green sponsored the book.
I interviewed him for the book. He's in his interviews in the book, and then he also endorsed us, and that's going to be on the back cover. Which I still kind of pinch myself and can't believe. I love Ahman Green. I had him on so many fantasy teams. I mean, that's my guy.
I'm willing to look past that to enjoy your guys' hustle. I mean, that might be a deal breaker in some cases, but here, still gonna look past that. Won't hold that against you.
Well, if Nick Foles wants to sponsor the book, you can get him to reach out to us, and we'll take a Nick Foles sponsorship any day.
I don't remember, when are we playing Green Bay? We're playing Green Bay soon, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Oh God. I mean, I know we've been doing well, but I mean, I'm an optimistic Bears fan, so I know some of those games have been, to the wire. So,
yeah,
I'll reserve my comments for another podcast.
That's funny.
You were saying that you wrote this book, you had this book in writing during COVID. I mean, did you go in? When did you start writing this book? I mean, were we in COVID when you started writing it, or
no? We started writing it. So it's funny. A lot of it initially, when we were outlining, was based on writings that Steve and Chris had done. I mean, Chris is very prolific in terms of his writing for just generally in terms of esports. And then we were kind of deep into it when we were in the pandemic. And that's when, as we started talking more about kind of what we were seeing and what people were doing, we were like, you know what, we need to find space to capture all of this, because positioning esports as the athletics of remote learning, I think, is a really interesting concept when you think of the fact that, most sports couldn't continue, and most of everything couldn't continue. I mean, even still, I find it funny, we talk so much about like, teachers are doing such a great job, and we're so inspired. And it's like, yeah, but we're not really supporting teachers the way we need to in terms of the types of professional development and opportunities that we need to help them thrive. And if we're not doing that for them, then we're definitely not doing that for students.
Right.
And esports feels to me like one of those things that is a very low lift to start off with, but to give those opportunities even now. So we talked about Reality Bytes, how that Reality Bytes actually came out a month and a half before the pandemic hit. And right when it hit, people were like, oh man, this is great, right? It's the time for AR and VR. And we were like, what are you talking about? No one wants to put on a headset right now. Definitely, like, you hand me a headset, I'm like gonna just let it fall on the ground. I'm not holding it right now. So, we've looked at things like web AR and web VR as kind of those entry points on that front. But esports is a total, like I said, it's a low lift. There's really nothing. And kids are really the ones who are going to guide the way on it. All you're doing is providing them that safe space for them to do that.
Definitely. I mean, just, there's so many kids right now that Minecraft, Fortnite, pretty much everything across the board.
Steve's actually, I know him and Mike Washburn from Participate have been running this, or helping to run this program through NASEF, which is the North American Scholastic Esports Federation, and it's been tied in with like Minecraft and creating Rube Goldberg machines in Minecraft. So there's so many ways to connect what kids are doing outside of school in video games to what we want them to be doing, and to aligning it with the standards and the things we would like them to be doing. But what people will be surprised about when they read the book is you're going to have to get halfway into the book before we even start talking about games, because we spend the first half talking about how important esports are from a social emotional learning standpoint, the types of diet and wellness that have to be considered for your esports athletes, and so many things that you're like, wait, I thought this was a gaming book, but it's not about the gaming. It's about how do we create more inclusive environments for our students in schools?
Definitely. I mean, right now, as it stands, I mean, I'm sure you've heard at your end is just that I teach history to high school, and it's just black screens on the Zoom, pretty much with names. I think for Halloween, I'm just going to build a box, paint it black, and just have my name on it. I'll be a Zoom call. It's just, and this kind of thing, talking about esports or even gaming, people kind of push it to the side like it's taboo, like, oh, that's juvenile. But to be honest, that's what everyone's buying PS5s, getting orders for Xboxes, and playing Fortnite, Minecraft, and Among Us on the phone. If you've seen Among Us, it's crazy.
Yeah, we're recording Partial Credit, my podcast tonight, and we actually have a whole segment planned around Among Us. So we actually have been doing a live stream, an Among Us live stream, and educators on Wednesday night. And last week, this really great conversation came out of it about how you can leverage Among Us in the classroom. So even you talk about persuasive writing and just how when you're call an emergency meeting and you have to convince people of your viewpoint. There's all these different tacks you could take for any of these games. It's just thinking outside the box. And the one thing I would say, and I feel like this is one of the first things I say, so the fact that I've waited all this time to say it, one of the things I feel like that is a barrier to esports adoption in schools is that there are many educators who don't feel like they know enough about the games or know enough about gaming to really start a program. So I would say every educator is in favor of giving students more opportunity, right? And especially for inclusion, but they don't know anything about video games. You don't have to.
Yeah.
To be honest, once you get into the actual minutia of the coaching pieces of it, as long as you structure it, the kids will be able to do most of that stuff. And I know Chris, who's a gamer, but he was his coaching background was football and wrestling. I mean, he was able to take that coaching, paradigm and fit it to esports and ultimately the skills. I have one of the interviews I did was with a student named Brock who actually graduated high school and he's now a freshman in college, but he's coaching. He may be a sophomore now, but he's coaching high school esports now. And he was the most serious coach I talked about. He was the most, adamant about ensuring healthy habits and what a practice is like. So a practice in esports isn't just about kids getting together and just playing video games. In Rocket League, for instance, you're practicing your position and specific skills and techniques that are aligned with you'll practice the same move over and over again for like 2 hours to try to nail it so that when you're actually in a competition setting, you're going to be able to perform that move. It's no different than any other athletics practice.
That's awesome. I mean, just taking it, I've used Minecraft and education program from that Microsoft has and using that for my history classes, having them building like Viking ships and all sorts of stuff. So it's ridiculous. Now, you did mention to me in the very beginning, you wanted to ask me some questions from a New Yorker to a Chicagoan.
Yeah. So this is the part of the show when we flip the script here.
Yes, sir.
Now I'm interviewing you.
Yes, sir.
But really, I only have one big question. Deep dish.
Oh God.
What's up? I mean, everyone has their own super firm opinion. I know I went to Chicago a few years ago and did the whole tasting tour. So I have my thoughts, but I need to know from a native.
It's a toss. It depends on the day of the week. It's a toss up between Lou's and Giordano's. It's a toss up between the two. Sometimes Lou's has it, Lou Malnati's.
I would have said Lou's buttercrust all the way, man.
Oh yes,
buttercrusts. It's funny though because people ask me about that and they'll be like, "Oh, deep dish pizza." And I'm like, it's not pizza. It's its own thing. It's its own thing because like New York pizza or Chicago pizza. I'm like, no, they're not even. It's like that's not even the same thing. It's a different thing.
The best thing too is that when you see someone coming from outside of Chicago, they go, "Where do you get a good hot dog?" And everyone always, if you've been to Chicago, you always say Portillo's.
Portillo's, yeah.
You go to Portillo's. The best hot dog, in my opinion, is you go down to the city. I mean, obviously not during COVID, but you go down to the city and you see one of those vendors outside like the museums and the ballparks and stuff. Those are the best hot dogs in the city.
Like a dirty water dog?
Like a dirty water. Dirty water dog. I mean, and people still to this day, I still have to educate them that a Chicago style hot dog doesn't have ketchup. You have to ask for
not all the other garbage.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I know that. Wait, it's got celery salt. That's always it. It's always stuck. It's celery salt, relish, which is really just like chopped up pickles, right? And mustard, onions. No ketchup, I know, but it's celery salt's always the one that sticks out to me. I'm like, oh, but it's celery salt.
Yeah, and people get thrown off by the celery salt, and it's like, what is this? It's like celery salt. Is it salt? Like, no, it's celery salt. It's different. And so you have to educate, and then people go deeper, like tacos and all this. I'm like, no. It's pizza or hot dogs. That's all we really, and a good hamburger, But that's neither nor. It's just good hamburgers are always hard to find.
Right. So. As a connoisseur of the burger, I would agree with that. It's all up to your taste, right?
Yes.
That was really the extent of my question. I wanted to talk about deep dish.
Oh, no worries whatsoever.
It's some of my favorite food spots are in Chicago, so it's a haven for great food.
The closest I've been to you guys has been Jersey, and it has been a long time, but that's the closest I've been to the East Coast. I've been meaning to get out there just because I know our friend, our friend in crime, Dr. Jetter, as in New York. So, definitely I want to come out and visit him one day.
And you have not been to New York?
I've not been to New York ever in my life, but I've been to Jersey and I've seen across from Jersey. So I'm just like, hey, that's New York. I know that. So
that's not the same thing.
I'm just like, but we didn't have time to go. We were on a different mission because we were going to see Jersey to see, I think, family or whatever the case may be. But I definitely, before I move on from this life, I definitely want to see New York and see the great. But I mean, obviously, after we get out of this whole thing, because I know New York can't be visited truly unless we're out of this whole thing when it comes back to normal somewhat.
It's true. And when you're ready, I have a burger list for you, for a New York specific burger and hot dog list. And basically, I have strong food opinions. So by New York, I have a list I give to my New York friends. Yeah, if you're coming here, I'm going to steer you right.
The burger dog crawl or whatever they're going to call.
Right, that's what we're famous for good food and good education. I don't know. I made that up.
So my last thing for you, because I was mindful of time, is we talked about the book, we talked about esports and everything else. How will esports or this book push even more than what we talked about, push the boundaries of education going forward? I mean, how do you think this manifesto, manuscript, whatever you want to call it, how do you think that's going to take esports above and beyond?
I think that one of the things we always talk about in education is what do we do for those students where the traditional academic setting isn't necessarily right for them? I mean, it's not always a popular thing to talk about, but we used to have vocational programs pretty much in every high school in the country, and gradually, as we had less funding available to schools, those programs slowly got rolled back, became part of outside of school opportunities where districts would enroll to send kids there, whether it was automotive or culinary or whatever it was. But the thing is, esports is a vehicle for providing those types of opportunities for students within the traditional school setting without having to kind of overhaul the structure of what exists right now. Mm-hmm. So those students who are kind of struggling to find their place, find their niche in a K-12 school have that ability now and can actually come out of school. We talk a lot about, and I'm actually going to just plug for 1 second. So I'm actually presenting, I'm moderating a panel at EduTech Asia next week on how do we prepare students for the jobs of the future. Esports is very much in my mind every time I have that conversation, because that is preparing students for the jobs of tomorrow. Not all the jobs, but it is an entire industry that's coming up that needs those broadcasters, streamers, script writers, on-air talent. These are all jobs outside of the games themselves. You look at some of the videos that we see students producing, or the types of content we see students producing in their classes. This is just another vehicle to give them those opportunities to channel their skills into something that match their passions and ultimately will help push them forward. And the funny thing is, when students are engaged and feel like they're part of the school community through like an esports program, they're more likely to actually be engaged in their traditional classes as well. Mm-hmm. So this is just a way to kind of connect students who have not felt an ability to connect to their school community and provide them with those opportunities for success.
I think that's awesome. I mean, definitely we're especially now with virtual learning, we're trying to get, I don't want to teach to 25 black squares. I want them all to be engaged, and I want them all to take away from something. So definitely, I think esports is definitely the way to go. I mean,
I will say though, you're like every teacher out there, right? Like, so no one wants to be doing that, but it's kind of where we are, mm-hmm. and everyone's doing the best they can. And it's hard for teachers to even think about taking one more thing on their plate. And that's why it's a matter, like, that's the thing. What students really need is a guide to help them start these programs. They don't need someone to do all the heavy lifting and know about every game and do like, and be able to kind of know inside and out. They need an adult to help pave the way for those opportunities to happen.
Definitely. And everyone else, any teachers or administrators out there looking to start a program like this, definitely this is the book to check out. This is the person to talk to.
You're super excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. And then, I even have kids wanting me at the end of class. I have to, I bribe them a little bit. I'm like, hey, if you do your work, if you participate and engage, I'll share my iPad screen. We'll play Among Us real quick, or we'll do something just to get them to be engaged and to do something. Cause the traditionals, yeah, you have some extra tools, but like you got to go more. I mean, you got to think outside the box on this.
Are you sus?
I'm sus.
You're sus.
I'm
they
sus.
let you marinate and then yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sus.
I'm learning all the words. I'm learning the lingo.
Yeah, I even bring that up to some of the teachers and administrators in my building, and they look at me, they're just like, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, you sus." And then like a student might walk by, and they catch their eye. They're like, "Yeah, you're sus, right?" And then, and then they learn, and I'm just, "Hey, that's learning for the day. That's your applied learning for the day. That's a teacher."
I was playing on that live stream and my son was next to me and he was kind of coaching me through the first few rounds because I had no idea what I was doing. And of course, the first round I play, I'm an imposter. And so I'm like, what do I do? He's like, go over there, whatever. And I'm like, so my job's to kill people, right? He's like, yeah, no, you don't just go killing. First person I pass, I like stab someone. There's someone like 2 feet away. He's like, what are you doing? Like there's someone right there. He's like, you don't know idea what you're doing. So it's kind of funny to not just hear him talk about strategy, but even watching him when we were playing side by side later and watching him in the meeting, how he was kind of throwing it off to other people. It was just like, wow, look at this. This really, like, there's no way as an educator that you can watch these kids play this and be like, yeah, there's nothing valuable here for them to get. It's like, there's a lot to unpack with that game. So it's funny. And like I said, we'll be talking, we actually have a segment planned tonight on the Partial Credit podcast to talk specifically about Among Us and how it could be used in the classroom. So it's despite all of the chaos and the craziness that's out there because of the pandemic, I mean, there really are some exciting learning opportunities out there for students, whether it's esports or AR and VR. I know I just got my Quest 2. I'm ready to crack into that.
Hey, I got one too today.
So switching from esports for 1 second, have you had a chance to see anything about Facebook Horizon yet?
No, I have not.
So do you know anything about it?
No.
So right now it's in beta. A few of us are part of the beta program. It's essentially the Oasis from Ready Player One. It's not available yet to the public, but right now what's happening is there's a beta community that are building worlds inside so that once it's opened up, people can come in, but it's here. And when you think about the learning opportunities that are going to be available through a tool like that, where I can build a world to bring my students into to show them whether it's a gallery walk or whether it's, create an actual virtual artifact of my learning. I mean, I'm excited to get the opportunity to show teachers what's possible in their classrooms because I think, and I recognize now is not the time to necessarily throw all that on them because we're still trying to figure out how to do remote learning. But as we start to transition back, one of the things I know will be a positive outcome of this pandemic is teachers have pushed themselves in a way that I know that they have never been asked to do and that maybe they even never thought were possible for themselves. And so as we start to get, I don't want to say back to normal, but as we start to kind of enter this new phase of education, we're going to have a teaching population that is incredibly well prepared and positioned and open-minded about introducing new technologies into their classroom to help improve teaching and learning outcomes for kids.
Agreed.
And that's what I'm super excited about. It's kind of like all of the suns are aligning, right? It's like the Tatooine, the two suns, they're gonna, it's right. Everything is aligning for a really like rich, fruitful period of education where these amazing things can happen.
Education is going to have that awakening. It's just that technology.
Totally. We're on the precipice, man. I know it's so hard to see right now because of like everything we're in, but we're right there. And it's so exciting knowing that and being aware of all these different things and me like, man, when these are in classrooms and when teachers if a teacher puts on a headset and sees the Anne Frank house and understands this is what I can do with this type of technology, there's no what do you call it? Once you've seen the Matrix, there's no unseeing it, right? Like now like you've taken the whichever red pill, blue pill. No actual pills were taken in the making of this podcast, but theoretically, you know, the metaphorical pill. And now you know.
And I'm the biggest, and anyone, if you talk to anyone at my school, I'm the biggest ed tech nerd. Like I would be the one to use Classcraft or Pear Deck or Edpuzzle or everything else. And then everyone's coming to me to give the PDs to half the school on Edpuzzle and Pear Deck and all this other stuff. And it's like I told you guys, this is something that we need to be interested in. Now this is why. Because it's just coming full circle that this is the kind of things that we're going to need. And any educators out there, administrators out there listening, it's just like, if you have that one person that is ed tech friendly and ed tech knowledgeable, harness them to the power that you can, because they're going to be your best friend.
It's funny you mentioned Classcraft, which I smile because I from the very first time someone explained it to me, I was like, I love this so much. It's, by the way, Devin, one of the guys who created Classcraft, he's a huge foodie in New York. I think he's Canadian, but anyway, if you distill Classcraft to its essential like nugget of kind of what it is, right? It's just an incentive system for kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
All these different technologies, when you boil them down to what it's all about, have those similar characteristics for all the things we've been trying to get kids to do for years. So it's really not about using tech for tech's sake. It's or because this tool is cool. It's about because ultimately all these things are going to improve. They're doing the things we've always wanted to do in our classroom. So when you look at it that way, as opposed to from this fear-based, I don't know technology, I'm not good at technology, that's when the world opens up for you in terms of what you can do in your classroom.
Definitely. I think the best way I've heard it discussed that what Classcraft is if Class Dojo and World of Warcraft had a baby, it would be Classcraft. And I use that when I explain it to everyone.
Totally.
That's the best way I can see it to be able to explain it. Unfortunately, during this pandemic, I haven't been able to utilize it as much as I wanted to. But when we get back, definitely I'm one of their ambassadors. So that's definitely on my plate.
Awesome.
To use and everything else. Well, guys, Jesse, I appreciate your time, man. I want to be mindful of your time, but definitely everybody else, the Esports Education Playbook. What is the actual release date of this, sir?
We don't have an actual book birthday. I think next month, November 2020. So, again, to get more information about it and contests, discounts, stuff like that, bit.ly/esports playbook info. You're just going to drop your name and email address in there. And we're going to give you all the scoop on when this book's coming out. We are so incredibly excited. We're preparing a lot of special things for the launch. So we can't wait. We're excited. You know what? There is no mainstream esports education book out there. We're really excited to be the first to market. And we have some really just exciting stories and tips and advice to share. So we're grateful for the opportunity.
Definitely, guys. This is something you definitely want to check out, like, share. Please push this podcast to everyone who is a gamer, who wants to make some noise in education, wants to make some noise at their school. This is definitely what you want to do from Ready Learner 1. I always say Ready.
I do that too. Everyone does it. Everybody does it.
It's in my head. I'm just like,
okay, we hope to it.
And did you guys, just for out of curiosity, since it's Ready Learner 1 and it's esports, did you guys position this book so close to the release of Ready Player 2?
Not intentionally, but you want to hear something cool? We actually reached out to Ernest Klein to do the foreword for Reality Bytes, and he responded. He said no, but he did respond, right, through his publicist. So that was cool. No, but I will tell you, and this is maybe a little bit of a sneak peek. Take a look at the Ready Learner 1 logo and look at what appears to be the visor below the RL1. What else does it look like? Game controller, if you put a little plus and a couple buttons there. Okay. So yeah, stay tuned for some Ready Learner 1 esports stuff happening. We're excited. But yeah, I'm excited for Ready Player 2 as well. Although, did you read the plot? Like, did you read anything about it yet?
No, I don't want it. No.
Okay. I'm gonna keep this a spoiler-free zone. I'm nervous.
Uh-oh. I don't want to even touch it.
I'm nervous.
Saw the plot, the previews and stuff they put on Facebook and everything else. I'm like, I want to wait. I want to pick up the book and
I'll have the book day one. I'm still going to read it day one, but I am a little anxious.
Definitely. So guys, Pushing Boundaries podcast. Thanks, Jesse. definitely to talking about the Esports Education Playbook. What are you guys doing to push the boundaries of your classroom, if it's virtually or in person? Just remember, we're always here for our kids. Jesse, thank you so much. We do appreciate your time. Be well.
Thanks so much for having me.
Be well, and we'll talk soon. Definitely.
All right. Thanks.